Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy Mullins. I am your host, and I'm here with someone who has optimized their life over the last few years, Mr. Dan T. Alman?
Almond, there we go.
Almond, like almonds. Tallman. I admit I've said Thalmann, I don't know how many times, so you probably heard me say that. And
Yeah. Nope. Tallman works too because I have a couple 6'4" and 6'5" son and 6 foot daughter. I mean, so Tallman actually works sometimes.
there we go. Dan produces a bunch of Tallman. There we go. I like it. Now everyone will remember that. So real quick, shout out to our partners in our podcast that have supported us from day one, Greenup Wealth Management and also Summit Rejuvenation. And then our partner, but not partner, First Form, because hey, they pay me every 2 weeks. They're the one that keeps the lights on. And I mentioned that because that's Dan, how you and I met, is through supplement superstores slash, First Form. Specifically on the app is how we developed our relationships, our coaching, all that. So just kind of wanted to, give shout out to those guys and gals that once again make this podcast happen from that standpoint. So, but hey, before we get into stats, and I know you're a stat person, I'll fly and down. It's like I've got all kinds of stats. I'm like, perfect. This is going to be awesome. Let's give a little bit of background on yourself. You mentioned, of course, father and some kids, but let's give a little bit of background on yourself, and then I kind of want to get into maybe painting a picture of where you were at when you first decided to start your journey, right? And I do that because I hope that there's listeners out there that are in kind of the same boat as you, right? Father, demanding job, kids, like we're in it. And I say this all the time to, the late 30 to early 50, individuals. Like you're in it. It is a tough time of life. It is a tough time because you're at the point of your career that the expectations are high. Like you should be producing from that standpoint in your career. But then you also got to take care of kids. And a lot of times you got to be taking care of aging adults,
Mhm.
right? So that age group of that late 30s, early 50s, I feel like is really hard to start a wellness journey because you're just once again, you're just putting out all these fires that are going on in life.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I am 52 years old right now. I started this journey when I was 49, going on 50. But I live in a very rural part of Kansas. Palmer is the town. It's a town of about 125 people. And so we are maybe an hour from the closest Walmart, which is usually the measuring stick by that a lot of people use. So I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but we enjoy it. My family enjoys it. I'm married. We have my wife Jen and I have 5 children. Only one left in high school. My oldest daughter Acacia's in Charleston, South Carolina. She's engaged to be married. You talk about stages of life. I have my oldest daughter being engaged to get married next spring. My second daughter, Kasaya, actually lives just down the hill from us with our 2 grandkids. And so that's another stage of life. I'm a grandparent.
Yeah.
And then Eli and Ella are in college. And so that stage of life, and then still doing the high school thing. Noah is a senior and is
Yeah.
going to be a senior this fall. And so I've got all that going. I own a newspaper with my wife, a rural weekly newspaper, which seems almost like a throwback vintage. Oh, that's cute. That's quaint. Well, that's probably an explanation of what it's like to be in this business. Being in the print newspaper business in 2025 is a challenge in itself. And then, like you said, aging parents, and got all that going too. So, uh, absolutely tons of things happening, but life's been good. Uh, but we talk about what brought me here. I was obese for a good 25 years of life. I was athletic and slim in high school, but I always joke that I was the type of person who never had that good medium stage. I went from too slim and unmuscular that I didn't want to take my shirt off at the swimming pool to immediately overweight that I didn't want to take my shirt off at the swimming pool. So I never had that good stage. Uh, but it's something I struggled with because I was kind of a stress eater, stress time filler, bored, I'm going to eat. So food was always, I mean, I think I was absolutely food obsessed and probably still am, but I'm now absolutely able to manage it. And that quickly got me from maybe being 180 pounds, 175 pounds coming out of high school, somewhere in 205 when I was in college, and then just blowing up as the kids started to age. Maxed out at, there's been times I hit 330 pounds a few times in the evening on the scale. And I'd say I was above 300 for, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and above 180 or 280 probably for 15, 20 years. So I've joked lately that if obesity had a language, I am fat fluent. I can speak all the challenges of an obese person, from holding my breath in the morning when I'm trying to tie my shoes and not getting it the first time. So I got to take a breath and take another breath and tie my shoe and get it done, and knowing all, and TMI, but knowing all the good public restrooms when I'm traveling, and just had gut issues, challenge, and it absolutely affected my life.
Well, a few things I want to pull out of that. I just recognized where you live at because you're running on the Katy Trail. And of course, like this is how our minds work as humans. I keep thinking the Katy Trail is closer to St. Louis.
No.
Right? So that's the reason when I messaged you about the Zoom, I'm like, just come on over to HQ. Like, I'll be there in July. Now I realize like you're on that end of the Katy Trail, not
Well, and the Katy
yeah.
Trail's even a little ways away. I run on a gravel road just
Yeah.
south of town. That's
Okay.
it.
So total aha moment for me,
Yeah.
right? I got it, tracking that now. And you said something that I think is really true for those that are in their 40s right now. Okay. And what I mean by that, going back to like what we pocket, and I've gotten older as a coach. I turned 45 this year. Most of the coaches, or sorry, most of the individuals I work with, are 35 to 55. Now I've got some outliers. Yeah, I got ladies in their 70s, which I'm loving right now. When I had one girl, she came up to me at Summer Smash. She was like, "Will you teach me how to deadlift?" And I just like 70-year-old, just excited to learn how to deadlift because she's putting on muscle tissue. You talking about like, I'm like,
Mhm.
that was cool, right? And I get it. In my 20s, I coach more younger people. It's just part of the evolution. But you said something that I see a lot in this generation. Okay. And what I mean by this is if you're 35 to 55, you might fall into that bucket, like you said. You were really skinny, had no problem with your weight, so you didn't have to learn really any behaviors or any
Right.
habits early in life, right? I was kinda opposite. I was overweight growing up, so I had to kinda learn, like, some new habits and some new behaviors to lose the weight, right?
Yeah.
And it's been a
Right.
blessing because I've been able to make a career out of that, right? But for you, it was like you're the one of those guys that could eat anything they want to, probably didn't gain weight, created some of these bad habits,
Yep.
and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, right, life happens, metabolism slows down, not as active. Boom, you gain the weight. So you like I said, there was no in between for you. You went from skinny, underweight,
Yeah.
tall individual to, heavy set 330 pounds, So I think a lot of people that happens. And it can be good or bad. Good that, hey, at least you just got to learn new behaviors. We got to change it. Right.
Yeah.
But don't beat yourself up if you're listening to this and that's happened to you. It is very common. If you didn't have to work at it, you didn't have to maybe learn nutrition, you didn't have to work out early in life. That's okay. It's not anything against you. It was just how it was. But we got to change it up now.
Yeah. I even had the ego. I remember being like a older teenager and having the ego because I was so slim, and it was just natural. Of course, we had, what, 2 hours of basketball practice every day or whatever sport.
Yeah.
I remember thinking down on overweight people, saying, I wish I could gain weight just to show them how easy it would be to lose it.
Right, right,
Oh, that
right.
was the wrong attitude back then.
Karma 10 years
Yeah,
later.
exactly. 25 years of karma later.
Awesome. What was and just for, numbers right now, what was the lowest we got to? What are you kind of maintaining now? So once again, we talked
Yep.
about it, probably 330, 340 was your highest weight. What was kind of the lowest we've got to? Where are you kind of maintaining at?
Yep. My goal was 198 pounds, and I got down to 192 at one point. And I started at about 40% body fat. And I did do a, scan once coming back in St. Louis at an S2 store, and I got down to 9.9% in on August 26, 2023. Uh, last Late last fall, I decided to do a bulk, which turned into a dirty bulk, and that's a whole nother story. But it was a nightmare. But I did gain some muscle. My goal right now is to be between 204, 208. This morning I was 211. So I'm fairly comfortable. I honestly feel like you talk sometimes about the things that you don't expect coming into a weight loss journey. You expect things like the scale, clothes fitting better, that sort of thing. But the absolute feeling of optimal health is something that I don't think people can grasp until they're living it. But it is probably one of the best feelings to have, is like, I feel amazing all the time.
You don't know that you feel bad, right? Like, and
Yeah,
and I talk about a lot of times, with individuals, I'm like, hey, we start talking about like brain fog, and they're like, they have no idea what we're talking about, right? Because they're so used to just being in that, like, well, this is a normal feeling
right,
until you start feeling better. Yeah. And then you did, what I have happened to a lot of us, right? When you initial lose this weight, you would get down super lean, and then you kind of have that aha moment. And I remember when you talking about this on the app, it was like, while we achieved the goal of single digit body fat, to achieve the goal of the low 190s, you were kind of like, man, I want a little more muscle tissue.
right.
Right. And I
Yep,
think that is normal. And I wouldn't discourage people, like, don't worry about that in the initial phase, right? Worry about, once again, the journey and getting down, and then we can always build the muscle tissue, which you've done over the last year, right?
yep,
So that is a normal feeling, a normal emotion a lot of people will get when they lose a significant amount of weight, is the look of like, man, I thought I would look different. And that's okay. Usually we do have to add some muscle, and that becomes, hey, we're just continuing on our journey for the next couple of years to gain this muscle tissue. And I think you're in a sweet spot now of like, truly that maintenance phase, like you were talking about, like, hey, optimal health and some performance goals. Now,
yep,
and those performance goals are different, right? You're in your 50s. It's not like, you're gonna go out and compete in something to earn money, right?
right.
Now you may go compete to set a personal best, 100%. That could be a goal. So I want people to understand, like, don't get down on yourself, especially if you reach that goal weight or reach that goal body fat percentage, and maybe what you thought and expected in your mind that you would look like, it looks a little bit different. Because what I see is a lot of people do need to gain some muscle tissue after their first initial fat loss journey.
We'll be right back.
If you're a podcast host or someone wanting to be interviewed on podcasts as a guest, visit podmatch.com. Podmatch automatically connects ideal podcast guests and hosts together for interviews. We always say it works just like a dating app, but instead of connecting you for dates, it connects you for podcast interviews. Podmatch has connected over 85,000 guests and hosts together for interviews that listeners love, all while saving you countless hours of administrative work through built-in automations. If you're ready to level up your podcast interviews on either side of the mic, start today by visiting podmatch.com.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought I felt great when I hit my goal of 198. I went into kind of maintenance at that point. And there was this, like, I definitely felt like I had phantom fat issues. Like, I didn't know how to exist as a normal, healthy, fit person. And so I went a good year just like trying to figure out, what do I do now? I'm not like trying to lose weight anymore. I'm just trying to live. I couldn't figure it out. That was a lot of 2023. But it was then later on that I started thinking more of the physical and muscle development and that sort of thing. And even though I thought I was feeling peak health in 2023 after hitting that goal, doing the resistance training, doing a little more running, adding swimming in during the summer at the public pool, uh, that stuff actually all leveled up. And I'm 2 years past hitting that 198-pound goal. And I continue to this day to find new little things that I'm like, oh God, this is new. This is awesome, and that just unexpected. But
Yeah.
2024 was what I would call then my peak physical year, because that's when I decided I'm going to go for a lot of stuff. And that's where kind of some of the stats come in. I went from, when I started this, I hated running anything more than 100 meters, even in high school when I was slim, and trying to do a couch to 5K program. And I'd run for, I think that starts out with 60-second runs. I could barely make it at probably like a 14-minute pace. I could barely finish a 60-second run, looking forward to that 90-second walk between. I would, on this road south of town, I would set up those little, you have those wrought iron bottle holders. I would set them up along the path so that I could grab a bottle as I'm running for 60 seconds to take a quick drink so I could throw it to the ground, because I couldn't do it. I mean, I was a 300-pound man running out there. But going from that to last year, when I decided to just start seeing what my body could do and getting excited about it, I did a half marathon on this road, which is
Yeah.
back and forth in March of 2024. I climbed, my wife and I climbed a 14er, oh my gosh,
Oh,
I can't even remember the name of the mountain, but Elbert in Colorado, the tallest mountain west or yeah, east of the, or in the lower 48 in the Rockies. I've done lots of 10Ks. I've done trail run 10Ks. In September, Will Grumpke dropped a challenge of doing some long challenge to yourself during September. So I said, I'm going to do 100 miles in September. So I did a 5K a day plus a couple 10Ks to get to that 100-mile. Daily 5Ks from a person who couldn't run 60 seconds without wanting to literally die. And then I've done some fast 5Ks. I've done a 24:59. I wanted to break 25. I got that. I broke 7 minutes in the mile. All these things after 50 years old. And so yeah, I'm not into the things of like being competitive at my age of life, but it's more like, oh my gosh, what can my body do? And my body continues to surprise me.
and that's a wonderful mindset. And talking about small world, when you did the 14er, you were actually, and we didn't get a chance to see each other,
Yeah,
but you swing by
I
and
looked for you and I
yeah,
couldn't find you.
Katie, my wife was doing Leadville that day, and you were there at the finish line, but we could never
Yeah,
link up, which was so cool because counting you and I want to say I had 8 to 10 other people from like Team Alpha from the app that were just out there, right? And I'm like, this is cool seeing people out doing these type of things, and I'm 100% on you. Like I'm competitive with myself,
yeah,
right? Like and you're going and doing these things. I think it's such a great metaphor for life. And what I mean by that is there's challenges. We all have challenges that are different, right? But we all have the same problems. And what I mean by that is if you look at life, we've got finances, we got relationships, we got family, we've got our work. Like all the problems are the same. They just might look a little bit different, right? You got timelines the same or deadlines, timelines for deadlines, same as I do, even though it's two totally different businesses, right? And, I think when people realize like, hey, if I just work at it, I can achieve more than what I think I can. And I think I've got this up. I want to make sure, see if I can make this happen right here. I'm going to share my screen, see if it works. Boom.
yeah.
Yeah. On the recording. Listen, I'm getting fancy. Who says you can't teach old dog new tricks? So here it is for those that are looking. And I don't know if this is the most updated Dan, but here for everyone, if you're on Instagram, is Dan Tall Man
Yeah.
one on Instagram. But here's some great photos of what we were talking about, right?
Yeah, people love the before and after photos, and
Yeah.
that was my day one on July 25th, 2022. And then I like to document, the before and after stuff. And I'm now past day 1000. So, they often talk about I've seen recently on social media, show me your last 1,000 days, and I'll
Yeah.
show you something. And I have that last 1,000 days to show.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this, like, I mean, even in this picture, like the legs, right? Because you'll see a lot of
Yeah.
people who are overweight and maybe their legs are muscular, you don't see much change in your legs. But even for you here, look at just like how much leaner, your body is. So it's been one of my favorite probably transformations. And I can always tell a good transformation when you put it on Instagram and people are like, oh, different guy, or it's fake, or what steroids was he on? And I'm just like, man,
Oh
you
yeah, all the time.
yeah, I'm like, you guys have no clue, right? Like, so pretty interested, and I love kind of how you put some of these side by sides that's out there, and then just kind of share what you're doing, and I think
Yeah.
that's a great way.
Unfortunately, I wish I had way more pictures and video of me in my obese stage, but I avoided the just like anyone. I
Yeah,
avoided the camera like you wouldn't believe. And I
don't
was a
want to be there.
photographer, so I'm like, I always had the opportunity to be in a camera, but my God, I avoided that thing. Now I'm like, dang, I wish I had a lot more pictures.
Yeah, but also, I just want to show that change, from that. But let's go back a little bit, and I know it's hard, and I'm sure you still remember some things, but let's talk about some of the, just maybe the emotions, the thoughts you had of yourself, back at the 49-year-old version of yourself that was 330 pounds, right? So just
Yeah,
once again, just kind of share with, because I want people to understand like emotions are meant to be felt,
yeah,
right? And we as guys, sometimes it's like, well, what are we gonna do for emotions? Let's just push them down really deep and not let them come out. Well, that's not necessarily healthy, right? Or a lot of people will feel like they're weak if they feel a certain way about themselves.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, emotions are meant to be felt, right? Now, our actions that we choose to do when we have a certain emotion or we have a certain thought process, that's on us. So your actions are on you. What you feel, that's normal. That's emotions. They are meant to be felt.
Yeah. So I'd been trying to lose weight for like 25 years. I'd tried all sorts of diets, fad diets, different things. The most I'd ever been able to, back in 2016, I was able to lose 60 pounds. And it was on basically an extreme calorie restriction diet, to the point where I would force myself to go to bed at 8 o'clock because I was so hungry that I had to just try to sleep because there was nothing I could do. And I lost it. It was absolutely unsustainable. So I've been doing this sort of thing. And then I gained all that weight back plus way more. And so I'd gone through that journey. And so I've said before, I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage coming into this. It goes both ways, but I was so desperate to lose weight. It's something I thought about every single day because it affected me professionally. Just not only with like confidence coming into a room where I was always the biggest guy there, but also just I was a business professional. I felt like I wasn't presenting though a very professional image in the way I looked, and it affected me constantly. I couldn't do anything with my kids that I wanted to do, that I was able to do maybe with my older kids a little bit. And then with grandkids coming, it was like I had literally started telling my wife and kids that it is very likely I'm going to die early, but that's okay. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ and I'm going to heaven. And so I'm okay with everything. It just, kind of sucks that I'm going to die earlier than everyone. Uh, and so I was kind of resolved to this fact of life because I basically had given up. But then my oldest daughter, Acacia, one day throws me this transformation challenge idea from the supplement superstores. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to do another one of these stupid things because it's just not going to work. But it's funny because just since she lived so far away, uh, my wife said, this might be something that she kind of a little bit guilted me into it, but this might be something that you and Acacia can kind of share and talk about and that sort of thing. And I was like, so literally in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this just because I feel guilty, but I'm literally not going to do this and I'm going to quit in 2 weeks. But I'm going to pretend I'm going to do this. I'll send in my before pictures, but no way in hell I'm going to do this. But I did it and I stumbled around for a little bit, but that was the start. And it was the approach that the, First Form and the First Form family of businesses, really project about, protein, 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 and everything with that instead of cut calories, cut calories, cut calories. My mind it was so difficult for me to comprehend that I could do any sort of weight loss without starving myself. I mean, I thought that was the only way to weight loss. And so even when I started this and having protein pushed on me and being proud that I skipped breakfast or something, and then my advisor, Luke Benson, he was like, no, eat breakfast. And I'm like, no, but I skipped it and I'm not even hungry. And he's like, eat breakfast, make sure it's protein heavy. So I started doing those things and that's when it started making a difference. And the momentum came because I lost so much weight so fast, which is easy to do when you're 323 pounds. And so the weight was coming off. I had the momentum, and that's where it was starting to work. But mentally, as a man, and a man of the 80s, I'll say, I have a Red Dawn poster back here. And I always think, if trouble were to come to my doorstep when I was 48 years old, could I, as a man, protect my family? Could I, as a man, do the sorts of things in an emergency situation that I would need to do to be a father, a husband, and do what I need to do to be that sort of person I wanted to be and I aspired to be? And I had to admit, I'd be the first one dead. You know, they talk about you don't have to be the fastest, but you have to be faster than the slowest. Because that's the guy that's going to be taken out. I was that guy, and I'd be taken out first, probably by a heart attack. But so it was constantly in my head that I was not living up to what I was supposed to be as a provider for this family. And it bothered me really, really, really. I don't think people really understood how much that bothered me. It was just kind of that mindset thing.
Well, I mean, here's the reality, and I'm glad it bothers you, okay, or bothered, right?
Mm.
Past tense because you fixed it. I, God, I can't remember where I said this, but I remember this was a few years ago, maybe around the same time frame. I took family vacation with my mom and my brother, and we were in Gatlinburg, West or not West Virginia, sorry, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we were in one of the and I can remember where I was standing at. I was standing in the bar area. There was seating. I was set up against the thing, just kind of watching the kids. At the time, I had Bridget, who was, an infant, 4 months old at the time. And the other kids were out playing the video games. And I was just looking around, right? And I hope that a lot of guys and even ladies do this, but like, where's the exit, right? Like, I mean, it's a world we live in. Like, we have to think about that, right? If a shooter would come in, where are they going to come in at, right? Probably over here in the entrance. Probably not going to come through the restaurant. Probably going to come through these double doors, right? So you're just kind of like setting that, like, what would happen? Could I run to get my kids? And then I just started looking around after that thought process went through and looking at other people, and I'm one that I don't judge, right? And one of the best compliments I got from one of my friends growing up was he's like, "Hey, one of the things I've always enjoyed about you, you've been into fitness, but you've never judged anyone when we go out to dinner or make food choices that they make, right? No, I'm not here to judge, right? I'm here to help. And once you ask for that help, I will hold you accountable, but I will not judge you, right? But looking around, it's the same thing you said. I would argue that 60, 70% of adults out there cannot run 50 yards, do a 50-yard sprint, pick up their kid and carry them 50 yards to safety.
Yep.
Like they can't, they physically can't. And that to me is just like, what are we doing, guys and gals? It's not about six pack abs. It's not about 10% body fat. Like, we should be able to, just as men, especially, protect. And it doesn't mean ladies can't protect, but we need to be physically fit to live a longer healthy life. Right. So I'll get off that soapbox, but I love that. And I just want to
Well,
say,
but it's also a functional sort of thing. I mean, functional fitness, functional health. I actually took tons of notes as I started this journey. Kind of journaled like both my physical activity, but my food intake and all that sort of thing. But I looked back on it and I had notes that I push mowed my little front yard. At the time, I wasn't calling it little, but I would push mowed my front yard and I only had to take two breaks. It's like I had to take a break every couple of minutes, and it
before.
was ridiculous. And now I can work in the freaking yard all day long doing actual physical labor in the beating sun, and it does not phase me. Period.
Well, and listen, that's life is over when you physically can't do stuff.
Yep.
I hate to say that, but that is true. Like, we've talked about the data on the podcast before. If you want to live a longer, healthier life, you have higher muscle tissue and you have a higher VO2. Now, this doesn't mean you have a 70 VO2 and you're an ultimate, marathon runner or cyclist. I'm not saying that, but it means you have that 35 to 40 VO2, which for me and you is relatively low right now. But
Mhm.
what we're saying is we want to maintain this into our 70s. And
Yep.
that means that when you're 70 years old, you could walk on a 3% incline at a good 3.5 mile an hour pace for 30 minutes. That would be an average VO2 of 30, right? But the reality is, when people in their 60s and 70s, they can't do that.
Right.
So that, I think that goes hand in hand. And that's my underlying goal. As I've gotten a little bit of age on me, I've really, as a person, went away from like, oh, I'm training for this. Like, right now, yes, I got some mountain bike races coming up. I have some goals that I have set, but they're really just short-term goals. To my long-term goal, which is at 65 years of age, I'm retired. I'm playing in the mountains somewhere, right? And I'm living life. That's
Yep.
what I'm training for, right? And so I think that is such a big thing, that was one of the things that you thought about. I think we wish more people would.
Well, it's a mindset thing too. I've while I'm not necessarily training for a specific event, I would like to do a triathlon this year. That's something that's been on my bucket list as kind of the final check mark of a specific sort of activity.
Yeah.
But I've also said my mindset is I want to be in the type of physical condition that if there was some sort of challenge that comes up that's like would challenge me physically, I could just up and do it and I
Do it.
wouldn't have to train for it. That's where I want to be physically. And I'm not saying I'm going to go, I'm going to go do an Ironman tomorrow. No, not that. But I'm just saying, oh, community's having 5K, sure, I'll go run it. Or, I have this much work to do in the yard, taking down some trees or whatever. Yep, we got it. We can do it.
One other thing that you mentioned, and I'll pull this in and kind of go into the next question. Excuse me. You mentioned earlier you started the challenge, but you already gave yourself excuse that you're going to fail.
Yep.
I think a lot of people, that is the mindset going into it because as adults, we do not like to fail. We
Yep.
have a fear, and our ego doesn't let us want to fail, right? But instead of going all in and not failing because we don't want to do it, we don't want to have that feeling, we make these excuses that we're already going to fail anyway, right?
Yep.
So I'm gonna quit in 2 weeks. I'm just gonna do this for her.
Yep.
Right? Now, luckily enough, you followed the game plan, all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm down, 10, 15 pounds, whatever it was. And you're like, maybe I should keep going. So that I see in a lot of people. They start something, but they're starting it with, well, I'm going to fail anyway. And that is their excuse, right?
Yeah.
Versus just running the game plan and going all in and having the results, which is always crazy.
But here's the thing. So I think people do that because they go into it thinking I've tried diets before, they never work, or I gain more back. This is probably going to be the same dang thing. I'm going to try it and I'm going to fail. Why should I even bother? Oh, I'll pretend I'm going to do it. And that's one thing I wish I could get across to people is that if you've been searching for a game plan that will work, this is it. Because it's nothing totally unusual. It's like the most obvious, simple plan in the world. It's not the most convenient thing to follow. And you absolutely have to change your identity and your lifestyle to do it, but it's absolutely worth it. And it would work. It's going to work. It's not a scam. It's not a fad. It's not, grapefruit diet or something like that that you can't maintain your entire life. It's an absolutely tenable, ongoing permanent lifestyle option that will work.
For you, 100%. Question I have during this whole process, what is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Oh, well, I've learned a lot because I failed a lot during this process, even while I was trying to follow the game plan. I don't know, the biggest failure, the biggest regret I have that I have told people is that when I started, I started with the fitness aspect. When I first started, it was all food. I changed my food, and that really started things in the positive momentum. But then like 6 weeks later, when I started exercising, I started with that couch to 5K, and I was literally killing myself doing these stupid 60-second runs. And you have preached since day one, and it's one of the biggest things I took away. Your protein education and your fitness recommendations are the two things I wish I would have had right from the start. But the zone two work, if I would have just done walks and not wanted to die while I was doing these stupid runs, I think I could have made my process so much more simple. And it could have also translated for other people watching me who didn't want to run and think, I can't do that. He runs all the dang time. Walking would have been by far the better thing. So I have regrets that I didn't use walking or rucking early on. And I've just fitness wise is where I've made most of my mistakes. I lift too heavy. I work out too much. Uh, all those sorts of things. When last November, when I started my bulk on November 1st, you and I had talked about it and strategized. And November 1st, day one, that afternoon, I went for deadlifts and I went, I'm going to go hard. And lightning shoots up both of my legs and screws me over for the next few months. So, fitness is where it's been my mistakes most often, just because I didn't take it. It was more of like, I have to force myself and grind and go hard rather than just bring fitness into my lifestyle, as you have preached.
And slowly build, right? And if you're new to this, maybe someone shared this with you, or you stumbled across the podcast for the first time. Hey, go back in the other. We got all the education somewhere. I'm sorry, I do not have them memorized, but like specific, podcasts on protein, on calories, on walking. But here's my elevator skill to everyone to get started. Walk 45 to 60 minutes a day, right? As Dan was saying, don't stress about what zone two is right now. The great thing about walking is it's kind of hard to go over zone two, right? You're not going to go higher than that. Now, eventually we can add a ruck, we can add a weighted vest, we can walk a hill. Yeah, we can get into that later on. But in the beginning, just walk for 45 to 60 minutes a day. Break it up if you need to, right? But just check the box on it, move your body. Protein and calories is a game. Usually we shoot for 1 gram of protein per target body weight. So if you want to weigh 200 pounds, eat 200 grams of protein. And then our calories, is roughly 10 to 12 calories per, pound of body weight for weight loss. So if I have someone's 260, eat 2,600 calories a day, 200 grams of protein, you'll see results. And then lift 3 to 6 days a week. And lifting can be any resistance training, body weight work, barbell work, dumbbells, doesn't matter. Don't stress about it. Don't get into arguments of CrossFit, Orange Theory, high rocks, bodybuilding. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever you like to do, that's kind of the quick elevator spill for that. So, all right, another question coming at you. What was probably one memorable experience along this journey that stands out more than the others, right? And you were kind of mentioning this earlier, like some things that you gained. You don't think to gain so many things on a wellness journey. You think of losing weight, right? But what was like one memorable experience of you really look back and even because there's hard days, don't get me wrong. There's days that you want to eat pizza, drink beer, be lazy. I got it, right? And we make the choice to still do the things when we don't want to, right? What was one memorable experience you're like, man, this has been so worth it, and I'm going to continue to do these habits?
Yep. So that's pretty easy. Climbing Mount Elbert with my family because I'd never climbed a mountain, period, not even a small mountain. But not just the fact that we did it, it was that I could do it and I could outdo my wife, who's a former D1 athlete, my 6'5" son, who is in peak physical condition. I led them the entire way. It was a challenge. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. But I did it at 51 years old. And there was many times I had to keep getting my 21-year-old son, come on, let's go. And when I finished, I just because I'm that type of person, I jogged over the parking lot to go to the car to bring the truck to bring the truck back to my family. So they didn't have to do that. But I jogged just because I can still jog after climbing a 14er for the last 7 hours. So
Man, and
the
then listen,
comprehension that I was 51 years old and then I could take on this physical thing that no amount of money could purchase. I can't buy health, like that. Elon Musk couldn't come in and say, what's it cost? $1 trillion to buy optimal health? Let's do it. This is something I had to earn. And then it was something I didn't necessarily train for that. I was just in the physical condition to do it. And that, in my mind, was an absolute turning point for me. And I'll cherish it forever.
no, I love that. Sorry, 140 pounds. That was what we kind of lost, right? Give or take.
130 something at the max, but my goal was 125. Yeah.
Okay, so over 130 pounds lost. What are some other stats that we haven't covered that maybe you wanted to kind of put out there? I don't know if you had any of your blood work numbers or anything like that you want to share, but what are some of the other numbers, metrics you had?
Yeah, I always laugh because if I went for a couple of checkups lately, just because I wanted to get some labs and all that sort of stuff, and the doctors always like, when I say I'm not on any prescriptions at my age, they're like, "You're on nothing, nothing at all." I'm like, "No, I take a few supplements, but that's it." And so they're shocked by that, which kind of tells me it's the state of society maybe isn't so great.
Right.
But the numbers have always been fantastic. And the results have been wonderful. Numbers wise, mine are more, when I went from 40% body fat down to 9.9 in just over a year, that was fantastic for me. Losing 125 pounds in just under 11 months was wonderful. But not only that, and you talk a lot about this, don't just set betterment goals for yourself physically and health wise. How about financially and mentally and all those sorts of things? While I was running, I didn't really listen to music. I listened to books and I read books, and I made intentionally went after some of that, and I got 78 books read in 2023. And so I, intellectually, which helps with the job and everything, but just constantly trying to improve everything. I did track my workouts. I had 402 workout days in 2023, and you'll notice that's more than there's number of days, but that means I did 200 runs and 202 lifts days, which was 107 of both, or two workouts per day. 378 in 2024. I'm not keeping track in 2025 intentionally. I'm trying to just live, and so that's those sorts of things. I've gotten up to a 46 VO2 max, which is my peak. That's
awesome.
always a challenge. I can't quite figure out how to hack that one, but I still run. I've done, I think, 7 or 8 5Ks this month because I'm getting back into running. I go in phases, whether I'm lifting or running, and right now I'm running.
Well, and one just education point, 46 is good because a lot of people who have the really high ones are super lean, and because their weight is in that equation.
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, like I right now I'm at a 42, but I'm also at the heaviest that I've been with that 42, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So what'll happen is because I'm gonna try, I'm got up in the 220s. So right now I'm trying to get underneath 200 just to be faster on the bike. So even if my conditioning stays the same and I go from 220 down to 198, my VO2 max will go up just because the weight went down,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's something you got to look at 46. If you did lose 20 pounds and look like a true runner, that number may be in the 50s. So
Yeah.
it's always to kind of be, just aware of that there is a weight component that goes into that because it is based on, your kilograms in weight. So I think you feel a little better on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man,
I'm at like
you got me
36.
motivate me. I got to get up to that 46.
Oh, I'm at like 36 or something now, so I'm definitely lower, but
Awesome. Um, oh, what was my other question? Before I get to, because I do want you to give, your thought to any listeners, the people that are in the same like kind of boat, that you're in. Um, you know, well, let's just do that. Not final thought, but what is something you want to leave the listeners with, right? And I really want to go after, anybody with this, but maybe specifically, like you said, that gentleman out there that's getting ready to turn 50, got 100 pounds to lose, just kind of lost in life and at the moment doesn't maybe have the motivation. What is
yep.
something that you would say, leave them with as we kind of get towards the end of the podcast today?
Right. So I've tried to figure out why did it work this time? What did I, besides the momentum, besides having the plan, how was I able to keep it? Because it's challenging in today's convenience society when I'm not eating pizza like I used to, or I cut pop cold turkey. So I did do some serious shifts. How did I do that and stick with it without feeling like I'm missing out on life? And one thing I promote all the time, and you've promoted it as well, is this has to become part of your identity. It's a lifestyle thing. It's not a diet. And I 100% believe that that has to be what guides people. So I've used the example of for the identity or how you identify. It's almost like you're a Minnesota dairy farmer and one day you say, I am now going to be a California surfer dude. Vastly different worlds, right? What they eat, how they act, how they dress, what they do on a daily basis. There's probably no similarities between those two types of people. And I feel for me, this was a similar situation. After I had that momentum, I was like, I have to just say, this is who I am now. Even though I was still above 300 pounds, I was not healthy. I was not fit. I still had very close memories and still had the pizza was still calling to me. But I re identified at one point early on and I said, I am now a healthy, fit person. And I am going to do what a healthy and fit person does every day, every hour. And so when I would go to the grocery store, and this is a true story, and I would fill my cart with, the outside aisle stuff, uh, proteins, I'd do dairy all the time, fruits and vegetables. That was in my cart. And I'd go to the checkout counter. The challenging situations, I could say, is this something that a healthy, fit person would do? Yes. Okay, I'll do it. Is this something a healthy, fit person would not do? No? Okay. Well, I'm not going to do this then. And that really brought me through a lot of the decision making process is just you have to identify as someone you want to be, not someone who you've been for the last 5, 10, 20 years. And that made things easier on me. And just that desperate, I knew how it was to live that other way. And so there's absolutely no regrets in my mind for this massive change that I've done with my lifestyle and my identity. Why would there be? What am I missing out on? The gut problems 24/7 because I got to eat a great pizza. No.
And just in case I broke up a little bit because it went muted on my end, but we heard most of it, Dan. So I'm not going to repeat it. You know,
Oh,
try and nick that. So I apologize, but no, like because it's habits, right? Like what makes when you have the identity, right? And that's a great analogy. I'm going to steal that one because I always use a runner analogy, right? You can train for a marathon and go finish the marathon, but if you never really adopted the identity that you're a runner once you finish the marathon or you finish the program, you go back to default, whatever it was before. No different if you do a challenge, right? You do an 8-week challenge and you don't have the identity that you're a healthy person. You're just doing a challenge. Well, once the challenge is over, you're going to go back to what you were before. So I am 100% on board with that, recommendation to people. Like really, like focus in on the habits and have that identity.
yeah.
All right, flip flopping it because I was going to end with that one, but I want to know what is next. What can people expect from you? I know you mentioned, triathlon was in there, but what are some other things that you want to accomplish in this wellness arena? And I'll say this, Dan, for the listeners, Dan's been awesome about what I love in this community, and that's continuing to showcase his journey, which has helped other people. So he refers people over to our team to help all the time, and I love that, right? Because I don't necessarily with First Form, they don't give me a lot of new people to download the app because we're building out our team. So my team refers a lot of people, and you've done really well with that. But what is next? What can people expect you to go for here in the next 6 months, year, maybe longer if you want to go down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I do have a couple specific things. The triathlon's one thing, but by God, if I could grow some pec muscles, that would just make my life better. So that's like, it's harder at 52. Of course, I was always kind of that way, even when I was younger. I could never develop muscle, but it's happening. And I just kind of like the feel of it. I like if there was a situation where I had to tear the shirt off, I'd be like totally okay with it. While before that would be something that would just devastate me. Mostly, I want to just continue this process because I feel like there are probably a handful of people out there that think this too is going to fail because let's just watch him, look for him to suddenly gain 50 pounds back. And, as I was doing that, intentional sort of bulk, there is some risk of that. I could feel some of those old things like, on my shoulder just saying, hey, I mean, you're already doing this. What's a pizza going to do? So that's sort of scary, but it keeps me on track to have that voice there. I just want to be able to continue to showcase it. I think specifically, I need to do something with. I learned to cook during this process. I've cooked for myself because I had very specific needs in this journey, and evidently, I have kind of a knack for it. And so I've been able to learn how to cook. I'd like to be able to figure out a way to translate that better to people. Not necessarily maybe a cookbook, but something with cooking that people can do on a daily basis for health. I've really gotten into just the clean food movement, and I think there's something there. So that's kind of an area that I put a lot of my time in. And if that's specifically even just figuring out I can see my garden out my window here and figuring out ways to bring my garden into my kitchen and how that might translate for other people to do it as well. I just want to be able to take this magic potion that I've gained through this process and be able to offer it out to other people so they can have this miracle happen too.
That's awesome. No, listen, I can't be more proud of you. And if there is a you know avatar client out there at this phase of my coaching career, it's you. And what I mean by that is, in all like coolness and the reality of it, middle-aged guy, right? That starts the journey, has some success, and then adopts the lifestyle. Like that's kind of like my avatar of like people that do really well. And I think a lot of that is, we're dealing with the same thing. We're, yes, 4 or 5 years apart, but like the same struggles that I have are the same struggles that you have. And then in my
Mhm.
coaching style, I really like to say is it's a partner style. It is not do this, because I say so. It's kind of like, hey, we can try this. Here's the things I expect and here's the things that we can contrive, based on what's going on. And you've done that. Like you've done a lot of things that we just kind of tried and played. You were one of the first kind of clientele that I started going the higher protein on.
Mhm.
So going and trying to increase protein just to see how the body responded, versus the traditional just 1 gram per target body weight. So I want to say I appreciate you being coachable and trying new things, along this journey.
Well, and I appreciate you, Jeremy. I think one of the things I hope people can get from you is that listen to your education. The deep dives have really taken me to the next level. I was doing well. I was floating around, before I got onto the app and I was seeing results. But once I got hooked up with you as a coach, getting some of those deep dives on why we do the higher protein and what that means within that process, or why we do this or why we do that really did then cement this path that I was on. And I think that's what got me all the way to the finish line is being able to understand this stuff. And you put it all in such good terms and understandable ways. I absolutely appreciated that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time out of your day to be on the podcast. For the listeners, if you're new, hey, welcome to the show. And if you're interested in working with me as a coach, just go to the link in the show notes, download the First One app, add me as your advisor at Jeremy at firstform.com. No charges from my end as long as you pay for the app. That is the only fee there is to work with me. And I hope you guys and gals have a wonderful day.